Hey everyone, welcome back to the Den Fireworks. I've had a lot of questions about how I build my racks, why I build them the way I do, so I figured I would get a quick video together of why I build the blade style, as I call it, like I do. And I am no rack expert, don't take my safety advice. I've had really good luck building them like this. And I haven't had any issues, but I also haven't had any KOs or grand failures either. When I build a rack, depending on the purpose, is how long I will make each of these blades. Usually I go with 8 tubes and do 3 blades into each one. For me, that works. I can do a full shell kit. It's still light enough to carry around, and it's very convenient to me. And with these, I can either build them straight, like this one is, or angled. And because my ground is really uneven and rocky, I've also added an extra 3 inches onto this base here to hold it. And on all of my racks, I put in one of my speaker wire extenders because I remote fire. And this way I can buy the cheaper 1-foot igniters, either E-matches or Talons, hook them right up to this, but still have 20 plus feet to run this cable across on the field. So the blade itself is just 2x3 construction. So the length across varies on how many tubes I want. I usually don't even have an exact measurement for it. I line up how many tubes I want on a piece of 2x3, strike a mark, cut it, and then just clone that out for the rest of them. Then I use 3-inch strips of plywood on both the bottom and the top. Now, I know some people use 1x4s. I know some people use OSB on the bottom, plywood on the top. The reason I don't use full 1x4s is A, they're going to splinter a lot if something does happen. Where the plywood with the multi-layers, it's not going to be as big shards or spears coming out. So I stick with the plywood. I know some people say OSB on the bottom is the way to go. It's safer. I do have some racks that I bought from Pyros that have OSB on the bottom instead. And OSB is just heavy. It's a pain to deal with. It doesn't handle the water as well. It's going to need to be replaced. And my local Cheapo Depot and Lowe's don't carry plywood and OSB the same thickness. So then when I put the blades together, everything would be uneven. So I just go with plywood. And the reason I do 3-inch strips is the nominal thickness of this is 1.5 inches on this 3x2. So this base has 1.5 inches of lumber. And then each of these tubes has 1.5 inches plug in them. So that plug sits right in here. If there's a catastrophic failure on the shell rack, because that isn't an extra inch or 2 higher, I think that it would be a little bit better off because it would have room for the tube itself to expand. Because this HDPE does expand and blows out. And I'm hoping the pressure would escape more and not damage the wood as much, giving this rack a better chance to hold together. I haven't tested this theory. I hope I actually never have something explode in one of these racks. But that is my reasoning for doing the 3-inch strips on the top and the bottom. And this rack is solid. It's held together really well. So I am going to put a couple more of these together and then show you with the blades like this how all we got to do is remove these screws from these 2 blades and we could angle these sides out to 15 degrees, 20 degrees, we want 10 degrees, however we want it, and then just put it back together with a 2x4 end board. So I'm gonna get some wood cut. I will show you how they go together. It's really easy. There are a ton of videos out there as well. And actually the next 2 I'm going to build, I am actually gonna do a 15-degree angle on them because shooting some of those ones I got from Pyro Boom with the 15-degree angle really made me want some more angled racks. So what I do is I take the 2x3 and I lay out however many tubes I want it to be lengthwise. Because if you're using fiberglass tubes, they're going to be a lot thinner than the HDPE. If you want 6, if you want 10, however long you want to make it, just line them up. Give yourself a nice little strike at the end to follow, and then you can straighten that line out, make your cut, and then cut out as many bases as you need for what you're going to do. While we're cutting the 2x3 down, we're also going to cut the 2x3 in 12-inch segments. So with this 1.5 inch nominal thickness on a 2x3, it's going to be 10.5 inches up on the tube, and that still gives you 1.5 inches to easily grab that tube out. So out of the 2x3s, we are going to go for 8 tubes. We are going to go roughly 19.25 inches. And then for each one of these, we will need 2 12-inch sections as well to go up on the side. So I'm going to cut out 6 of these, 12 of the sides, because I'm building 2 24-shot racks using HDPE tubes today. Alright, so now we're ready to start putting the blades together. So this is enough to build 2 24-shot racks, 6 of the 8-shot blades. And then we have 12 of the 12-inch pieces to put in on the sides of them. And all of these I pre-drilled, because going into this cut of the grain, you don't want these screws to split it out and weaken the rack. So all we need to do is take some of our nice 3-inch deck screws. And the reason I use deck screws on these, one, they've got the really nice star bit, so we're not going to strip them out if we keep taking these out and putting them back in to change the angles of the rack. Because they're deck screws, they have a really high break threshold. They're also rust-proof, weather-resistant, work awesome. So I use the deck screws, and on the base, we want to put 3 inches in, because we have 1.5 inches nominal thickness on the 2x3. We want to make sure there's a good 1.5 inches in on that as well. Now, what I like to do, and it's just easier for me putting everything in together alone, is I will start the screws into the side of this. This way, when I'm holding it up and trying to line it up, I'm not worried about also getting the screw in straight and keeping it on. Then we put our base down. Just hold these together nice and straight. I put them a little near the edge so my base will reach. And then get those screws right in nice and tight. Then we can turn it around, go off the other side. We'll start the screws off a little bit. Alright, now we have 6 of the shells ready to go together. Now we need to cut down those 3-inch strips of plywood. We're going to need 4 strips of plywood for each of them, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. So we can measure this out, and we need 22 inches. So a 22-inch long piece. We're just going to cut a bunch of those out, and I will be back. Alright, so I've got all of the plywood cut out. Now, when I put these on, I do like to pre-drill as well, because we're going into that long grain and we don't want it to split. And on these, I just use 2-inch deck screws to hold these in. So I get one. So I pre-drill, and then I'll usually put 3 down at the bottom. Then we take one across the top. And you see, the plug, you just got a little bit of gap there that the wood will still be touching with the plug in. But this should now start to look like a rack. Still get everything in there nice and tight. Now we put this base on. There you go. You have an 8-shot rack. Now, if all you wanted was an 8-shot rack, throw a base on this, throw something on to sturdy it up so it doesn't tip over, and you're good to go. Or, we now repeat this a whole bunch of times. And, alright, there's our 24-shot rack with an end port on it. Or, we can do a 32-shot rack if you want something heavier. Or, in the case what we're going to do on this one, we'll fan it out as much as we want. So, I'm going to finish making the rest of these, and then let's put it together into the formats we actually want it to be in for the shoot. Alright, so now we have all of the blades done, and now it's how do we want to set these up for now. What I'm going to do with these ones is I'm going to do 3 of them as a straight rack, straight up, and then one of them I'm going to do 15-degree angles on each side. So, what I use to connect these is I use a piece of 2x4 across the bottom and across the top. The 2x4 is probably a little bit of overkill. And then also, because my ground is kind of crooked like this, just alone should not tip or have any chance of tipping. But because my ground is so weird, I always do an extra 3 inches on each side. So right here we're looking a little over 10 1/4 inches. So I will do 16 1/4 inches so that we'll have that 3-inch overlap on either side. And then the top, if we were doing the upright rack, we can just do the 10 1/4 and put it in here. But because I'm going to do this one fanned out, I don't know what it's going to be yet. So let's start getting the base on and then figure out what the angles are going to be and how far the gap is. So if I was making this one a straight rack, I would just start tacking all this in. I've got this pretty much evened out, but we are going to angle this. Now, to put the 2x4 into the 2x3 in the back, I use 2.5-inch deck screws. Because this is 1.5 inch nominal, this is 1.5 inch nominal, if you really sink that screw in, it can reach in and dig into those tubes or go through this sidewall. So I just use a 2.5-inch screw on this, which will still give you a nice inch into that other board. So we've got this pretty much where we want it. What I do to save myself hands or having to push it up again somewhere is a clamp is your friend. So I can clamp this on, make sure it's nice and level, and get those initial screw holes in. And then we're going to do the Same thing on the other side. All right, now we want these to be angled out at some degree of random that we want. So we can grab a handy roofing square to figure out the angle that we have. Or if you're a geek, we can figure out what kind of pitch we want here as well. Or, I mean, you can just eyeball with what you know and what you want. Then we can take this side. And then we can grab our measurement for the top here. So we could go 15 3/4 on both sides here. So this will go right across here. We'll have it down a little so we can go in and center into those ones. You now have an angled 24-shot rack. And if you're doing a show that you don't need an angled rack, take these screws out, slide the blade straight up. You're doing a show and you want to be a 25-degree rack, take these screws out, bend the blade further down. Easy, simple, life is good. And now there's just one more step to go. Grab a speaker wire extender and tack that baby on here as well. If you remote fire, I highly recommend building some of these. You can get these speaker ports for, there's 20 of them for $10 on Amazon. That's 50 cents each. Buy some 16 gauge speaker wire, tin it up onto it, put some shrink wrap on, tin the ends of these connectors so you don't have the speaker cable fraying or that copper wire fraying. And if you are remote firing, it is perfect that you can buy those cheap, short cables and still have access to the whole field when you're running. So we just want to mount this so we can still get to those clips. Boom. And honestly, guys, if you're remote firing, have spares of these. If you have a cable that's just a little bit too short because you had to move stuff around on the field, run one of these out. If you just want to buy the cheaper cables and then have these as an extender that you can just keep reusing and reusing and reusing, do it. They are outstanding, and honestly, they're going to save you money if you start buying the shorter cables. So that's how we build a quick rack, how we can make it into a straight rack, have an angled rack, change it all up. So I do want to say again, I am not a rack expert. I am not a pro at this. I'm not authorized. This is just what's really worked well for me. I've done a lot of firing with these racks. I haven't had a single issue with them. And they go together quick, they're easy, they're versatile, and I love it. And if you want a 6-shot, make it shorter. If you want a 10-shot, make it longer. Completely versatile for what you want and how you need it. So I hope you guys found this informative, those of you who asked. I hope it was useful. And, thanks for watching, everyone. Have a good day.